What's going on YouTube? This is Sode here, getting ready for another build. Got the table cleared off, a new stack of goodness here. And this one is going to be the Tomoquads Little Predator X. Now, a lot of you guys that know Tomoquads have known and heard of the Predator for a long time. It's been a huge seller for Tomoquads, and Tomo had a bunch of people ask him for a 2-inch version of the Tomoquad's Predator. So he designed the Little Predator X. This is going to be a ripping 3S build. You can do it in 2S, do it in 4S if you wanted. We're going to do a 2 to 3S version. This is a sponsored build also by number one, RunCam, because we're using the new RunCam Micro Swift 2, which is an awesome little camera. You look up here in the top right hand corner, you can click on the review for that. Another thing is this frame, the Little Predator X, is built and designed for the RunCam Micro Swift or the Micro Swift 2. Big shout out to RunCam. They sent us some Micro Swift 2 to use in this build, so we want to thank them for that also. For the power plant, we're going to use Emax's new 1106 series motors. I got to meet with them at Flight Fest, and they were gracious enough to send me some of the new 1106s to try out and sponsor this build. So anyhow, let's go through the parts list and get right down to business, guys. Let's start off with what you get in the Tomoquads Little Predator X racing frame kit. This is a 90mm frame, and the main bottom plate is 2.5mm. The camera pod plates are 1.5, and the upper plate is also 1.5mm. So you're going to get your plates, you're going to get your a real nice battery strap, you got all your standoffs, your screws and hardware, and then you have some soft mounts here for the sides of the camera pod plate, and then your bottom feet. So that's what you get with the Tomoquads kit. And I also want to make a point too of saying the weight for this with the hardware that is for the Micro Swift 2 comes to a total weight of 17 grams. The carbon fiber plate alone is 13 grams. Let's start off with the flight controller here on the parts list. This is the HGLRC FlyTower F3 25. This has become one of my go-to little cubes. It came out, I want to say, probably about a month and a half ago, and I have just used this in a lot of builds. When they first came out, I had one bad one, and since then they've all been solid as rocks. So what this is this is a 25 amp 4-in-1 ESC, and the flight controller is an Omnibus F4 flight controller with built-in OSD and all the goodies right there. There is no need to wire the two of them together. They have a little connector that plugs right in to each other. It makes the builds very, very simple and very easy. They have a couple different sizes of this depending on whether you're using 2S or 3S. You could go with a smaller ESC combo in this cube. This gives me the ability to upgrade down the road with this to 4S, which we're starting to see a lot of motors, and Emax has got the 1106s that now support 4S also. Got a bunch of these, figured I'd use this. So great little flight controller, guys. Now for the video transmitter, we'll use the tried and true Eachine VTX03. The Little Predator X is designed around the VTX03. You can also use the VTX02. The VTX03 is switchable, clear up to 200 milliwatt, and the VTX02 is just straight 200 milliwatt. The RunCam Micro Swift 2 with built-in OSD and all the new features, and I love the presets. Next up, we have the new Emax 1106 motor series. Let's go through the different motors that you can use on this. They have a RS 1106 7500 kV version, which that's what you would want to use if you're going to strictly do this in 2S. And then they have what we're using here today. It's the 6000 kV version, and that gives you the ability to use also 2S and then also 3S. So we're going to do a 3S with this. And then they also have the 4500 kV, which is 4S rated. Next up for props, we're going to use the Gemfan 2035 4 blade bullnose. For the power system on this little 3S beast, I've got a bunch of these ready-made RC 450 milliamp 75C 3S packs. You can also use clear up to a 600 milliamp pack. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do here is go ahead and get your FlyTower ESC, and I want to make a note of the direction. You'll see there's a little arrow on both the flight controller and the ESC that's showing your forward facing direction. And then if you look here on the top of the ESC, you'll see motor 2, motor 4, motor 3, and motor 1. Now the reason that that's important is because for this particular build, we're going to take this and we're going to flip it upside down, and we're going to solder the motors on to the bottom side of these tabs. So you can go ahead and flip it upside down now and go ahead and tin your ESCs so that they're ready to go. All right, now let's look at the FlyTower F425. Let's look at the connections here, and it'll be the same on whichever model you use, and the only thing that will be different is the ESC is a lower amperage ESC. But let's look here. If you're using a SAT receiver, let's go over that first. Here, right here is your DSMX. So that's going to be your signal wire from my Lemon DSMX. I'm going to power the SAT receiver with 3.3 volt, which is right there. And then I'm going to pull the ground right there. Next, let's look at the next hookup option you have. For the RunCam Micro Swift 2 with the VTX03, which is what I'm recommending for this build, we have two options. Now let's go over the first option. The first option is to just use the OSD, which is a great little OSD that's built now into the RunCam Micro Swift 2, and not use the OSD on the F425 flight controller. So I know a lot of you guys will probably just have the Micro Swift 2. You may be using a different flight controller of your choice, and so here's the hookup for that. Very simple. You come from the VTX03. You're going to power the VTX03, which requires 3 to 5 volt. So we're going to use 5 volt source on this. So we have options here in the front for the cam, which is 5 volt, your video signal, which we won't need, and then your ground there. So all you would have to do is power the VTX03 from the 5 volt and the ground, and then the VTX03 will power the RunCam Micro Swift 2. Now this blue wire here will connect to a couple different options. The V plus on the F425 board is the direct voltage from the battery. So you can run this blue wire to the V plus right there, and then that will give you your voltage readout of your battery on the RunCam Micro Swift 2 OSD. Now the next option would be to use both OSDs in conjunction with each other. And the reason that you can do that is since the 425 FlyTower FC has Betaflight OSD, you can set it to a switch on your radio and you can turn it off. And when you turn it off, then you will get the RunCam Micro Swift 2 OSD. You could also just add like the RSSI feed or a couple features which you can arrange in Betaflight and then combine those in conjunction with the Micro Swift 2 features. So in order to do that, you're going to power the VTX03, you're going to power it off the 5 volt and the ground, and then you're going to take just your signal wire, which would be going out to the cam, and you're going to connect it here where it says VTX. That's your signal wire in on the OSD of the flight controller board. Then you're going to take your 3 main wires, your video signal and your power and your ground, off of the RunCam Micro Swift, and you're going to connect them up here, 5 volt, signal wire, and ground. And what that will do is, oh, and then also, don't forget this, you need to take your blue wire also and connect it to the V plus for your battery voltage readout. That will let you run the OSD off the board and also the RunCam Micro Swift OSD, and you can use the two of those in conjunction with each other and combine the layouts to however you would like. Now, if you are using the standard original RunCam Micro Swift, it's going to be the exact same thing as what I described for using the OSD here. You're going to power your VTX03 off the 5 volt in the ground, and then you're just going to connect your video signal wire to the VTX there, and then you just take your 3 wires out of the RunCam Micro Swift and connect them 5-volt signal and ground. Now the next step is going to be, you already have your motors soldered onto your ESC, so we're going to go ahead and do ESC placement. Now for the FlyTower F425, I'm going to use the standoffs that came with it. I don't need the Tomoquads parts for mounting the ESC. So note, if you're using the FlyTower, that you have a little screw here, and then you have your standoff with your top screw. So I'm gonna run the little screw up through each of the 4 holes on the frame plate, and then I'm going to connect that to that, and then set the ESC on top of that. The next thing you need to do is get your standoffs. You'll note that there are 2 sides of these small screws, like this one right here. The one that is the next size up from this, is just a hair bigger than that, is the one that's going to go on the bottom into these standoffs, your 4 standoffs going around here. So go ahead and get that all together, and your motors mounted down, and you should already be also working on your soldering onto your flight controller, since we went over that, and we're about ready to pop this thing all together, guys. All right, now let's look at the assembly of the camera pod system. So you have your top plate right here, and if you look here from the side, you'll note that this long sliver here on the side plate, it slides onto the top plate. So now this is a very tight fit, so you may want to take an X-Tracto and edge that little slice right there a little bit, in case it's too tight to get on there, but you want to let it be as tight as possible once you get it on there. Then you're going to go ahead and take a standoff here, and on the front here. And then you're ready to go ahead and also bring into the picture your Micro Swift 2. And you can go ahead and mount that in here. Note these little side holes right there is where you're going to use the screw that comes with the RunCam Micro Swift 2, and you can go ahead and mount that in there. And then the entire top plate is done. You're going to set your FC down on top of the flight controller, and we're going to piece it right together. I also want to point out that if you're using the RunCam Micro Swift 2, you're going to have the stability of that camera in between the camera pod plate. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys as to how many standoffs you use. I think that you can probably get away with just one in the back, and then have the Micro Swift 2 holding the front. Okay guys, so the last step is going to be to put it together. You've got your pod together, your camera in there, and all that connected to your FC. So you're going to set your FC down. If you're using a FlyTower or most other cubes, you're going to set it down on top of the ESC. You'll note that on the FlyTower there is a couple little clips in between the 2 of them. I believe it's a 6-pin connector, and it just plugs right together. So it's nice with these new cubes, there's no soldering between the ESC and the flight controller. One other quick point is, leave a standoff if you're using the cube where you got USB, your USB jack is on the side. You want to leave one standoff off so that you can go ahead and plug into Betaflight and get everything set up the way you want to get it set up. And also, always remember, if you're using D-Shot 600, I highly recommend that you do your ESC calibration in one shot, and then after you do your calibration, then go to D-Shot. Just something that I've always done, and a lot of people recommend it for precautionary reasons. So you get that done, check your BLH heli, make sure your motors are spinning the correct direction, and then go ahead and throw on your Gemfan 2035s and get out there and give this little beast a try. I think you'll be really surprised. 3S on this small of a frame is something else. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining me here. Appreciate it. I want to thank Tomoquads always for their support. Without Tomoquads, I don't even know where this channel would be. So I'm very thankful to Tomo for all that he does to help us out here. And also thanks to Emax and thanks to RunCam for sponsoring this build. You guys have a good one. Happy flights.